Hey, what's up, everybody? It's just Charles Sabans. We're going to welcome you guys to another episode of the DREAMERSPRO show. We cover everything from sports, hot topics, classic debates, entertainment, and we give you guys a fresh perspective on things and how we see them. Today's episode is actually a continuation of a show that we had produced about a day or so ago. What show did we produce a day or so ago? We produced a show that was centered on a sit-down that Stephen A. Smith had on Chris Carter's new show. And during his visit, they spoke about sports media. They talked about the business, et cetera, et cetera. But then it got to a point where Chris Carter himself, they spoke about the incident between Chris Carter and Skip Bayless. But then it got to a point during their sit down where Chris Carter himself directly asked Stephen A. Smith, what was the cause of the fallout between yourself and Max Kellerman? He then went on to explain his views. And then what happened? We produced the show. People reacted to it. And then I noticed over the past 12 to 24 hours, many different news outlets started picking up on that story. And many people started covering it, right? Many people started talking about it and saying all of these things and blah, 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 about some of the things that Stephen A. Smith said in terms of the breakup that took place between himself. Well, not the breakup, it's Max Kellerman basically being booted from ESPN First Take. And then I began to think, as I was kind of going through these various articles, I'm like, wait a minute, there's a disturbing pattern that I'm noticing here, right? And it reared its ugly head once again during the sit down that he had with Chris Carter. Now, what am I talking about? Stephen A. Smith has this proclivity to constantly throw Max Kellerman under the bus. And really where it started was during a sit down that he had with Joe on the Joe Budden podcast about a year or so ago. This was after Max not only had no longer been on ESPN First Take, he was no longer on This Is Just In. He was no longer on ESPN The Morning Show because he was part of the cord cutting that the network had done. So he was totally out of a job at this particular moment. Then Stephen A. Smith goes on the Joe Budden podcast and essentially begins to destroy not only the reputation of Max Kellerman, but his credentials, and was basically saying Max Kellerman didn't even deserve to be on ESPN, given the lack of credentials that he had. I want to play what he had to say for you on Joe Budden's show because it's going to give this show more context. So we want to play that for you now. I want you guys to listen to what he said originally on the Joe Budden podcast, and I'm going to come back and continue on the show. Take a listen to Stephen A. Smith there.
What do you say to the people say they saw the tension between you and Max developing on air before his departure from the show? Did you hear any of that?
I heard some of it. I would take full responsibility for that. That's totally my fault.
Okay.
And the reason why it was my fault because I didn't like working with him, man. It's just that damn simple. I didn't like it. I thought the show was stale. I thought that we had flatlined when it came to the public at large. And I'm trying to win. I mean, I didn't want to go from number one to number two when Skip left. That's not what I wasn't having that. That was not going to happen.
Did anything in the numbers say that you might have been headed that way?
No, but to me it did.
Creatively?
To me it did, not just creatively, but the consistency of the number.
Got it.
In other words, it wasn't going this way.
Yeah.
It was just there. And so that's what I was feeling. And it was like, listen, I had mad respect from him from the standpoint that white dude, highly intelligent, Ivy League educated from Columbia, smart as a whip, can talk his ass off, can talk about anything. And I get all of that. But you weren't an athlete and you weren't a journalist. And the absence of the two components left people wondering, why should we listen to you? Okay, well, you might have had that figured out on Sports Nation, or you might have had that figured out on another show. But on this show, if you looked at the content emanating in the social stratosphere, meaning YouTube and other components that you use to measure one's cachet, Q ratings, focus groups, all of these different things, it was like I was damn near doing the show by myself because we were oceans apart in terms of cachet. Well, how are you oceans apart from me if you sitting right across from me 5 days a week for the whole 2 hours? Because one of us is resonating and one of us is not in that platform. And so for me, I was like, look, this is what it is. And we had a number of conversations, one-on-one, many, many times. I know this audience. I know what they're looking for. I know what they need, et cetera, et cetera. At some point, you're going to do what you need to do or you don't. And if you don't do what you need to do, I'm going to get somebody who will.
So you heard what he had to say. He was essentially saying that Max Kellerman was neither a journalist, nor was he an athlete. And he said, so why would people even need to listen to you? Why should they feel the need to listen to you, right? Why should they feel the need? He then went on to say he could get a sense basically from YouTube and other places, other metrics that measure sentiment, that the pairing of him and Max Kellerman was simply not going to work. Simply not going to work. So what happens? He goes on the Chris Carter show, and Chris Carter asked him, what was the fallout? What was the reason that the show ultimately didn't work out with you and Max Kellerman? And guess what Stephen A. Smith said? The very first sentence to come out of his mouth was that the reason it didn't work out was because it was Max Kellerman's fault. That's what he said. Those are the comments we want to play for you now. But before we even get into what Stephen A. Smith had to say, today's video is brought to you by sponsor Prize Picks, which is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Prize Picks is really simple. Instead of just selecting a team, you just select 2 or more players, pick more or less their projected stats, and then you place your entry. For example, this week, I'm selecting 2 entries. Stephen Curry for more than 25 points, and then I got Anthony Davis for more than 2 blocks, and Damian Lillard for more than 4 3-pointers made. Prize Picks is also the only daily sports platform with an injury insurance policy. So for example, if you have a player who gets injured in the first half and doesn't return to the second half, that player gets automatically rebooted. What I also love about Prize Picks is that it offers weekly promotions like Taco Tuesdays. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value. So go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first deposit matchup up to $100. That's go to prizepicks.com/CLNS, use code CLNS for a first deposit match of up to $100. And remember, whenever you support this sponsor, you're supporting this channel. Thank you. So what we want to do now is I want you guys to listen to what he had to say on the Chris Carter show, which just took place this week, just this week. And then we're going to come back and give you guys our closing thoughts. Take a listen to Stephen A. Smith here.
Max Kellerman.
Yeah.
What was the rub there? Why wasn't that show as successful as other partners that you've had in that spot?
Lack of chemistry. Believe it or not, it was more his fault than mine. I've seen his friend Marcellus Wiley bring up stuff. Marcellus Wiley knows one side. He certainly never spoke to me about it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Never called, never asked, or anything like that. And I'm not hating on him for it because that's his man. Him and Max are very, very tight. But if you want to talk about me, I'm not hard to find. Ask me.
Well, we've had hundreds of conversations.
That's
and
right.
Marcellus had hundreds of conversations.
How about that? How about that?
Yes.
Yeah, so.
And is one of the many brothers and sisters that this dude has helped out at ESPN. Because, listen, when you interview at ESPN, it might be a phone interview, video interview, it might be in person. But when you leave, guess what they do?
Yeah.
Stephen A. Bro, what you think? Hey, you know him? You know her?
Yeah.
That
all the time. But I will say this. You know, I might disagree with what he says, but there have been times when I think that Marcellus has been more than fair, and he's entitled to his opinion. I'm certainly not here to criticize him. I only bring him up because when I think about Max Kellerman, I think about the narrative that he's helped put out there. And I'm like, talk to me, and all you had to do, because I might, there's certain things I may not say publicly, but I'd have told Marcellus, because I know that's his boy.
Right.
You know, but it was a chemistry issue, and I think that people need to understand it was mostly my fault. I'm the leader. I'm the executive producer of the show. I'm the star of the show. I wasn't looking at Max Kellerman and saying it was his fault that the show failed. I'm talking about us. How I vibe with all the people that I vibe for. The proof is in the pudding. Look at how I vibed with the people that have been there since he's been gone. Look at how I vibed with Skip Bayless as a debate partner before he arrived. I think that Max Kellerman is somebody that I'm rooting for to return to this business. He's somebody that is nothing short of brilliant, like genius level, brilliant. Absolutely true. Here's the issue for a debate show. Because you are such a genius and you are so brilliant, and you have the ability to articulate yourself the way that he does, at some point in time, you're talking and you're talking and you're talking, and you're talking above the audience to the point where they find themselves asking, what did you just say? Now, I might get it because I know you. And I know where you're going.
Right.
And I know how you feel because I'm working with you every day.
So you heard everything that was said. I want to take my time and get into my thoughts about this. There are two things that stood out to me. Two things in particular. The first thing he was saying by saying it was Max's fault, if you pay close attention, he was essentially saying that Max Kellerman was sounding too smart for his audience. Because if you listen to the Chris Carter clip, he said at the end of when Max would finish speaking, whatever argument he made, he said a lot of people were sitting there scratching their heads and saying, what is this guy saying? Or what is he talking about? Basically, he was saying that Max, the way he would explain things and go about things, was going over the head of his audience. That's number one. Number two, if you reference the Joe Budden audio, he said, if you don't do the job that it's supposed to be done or the way I want you to do the job, I will get someone else to do it the way I want, and you will be gone. You will be gone in a hot, quick second. So what he's saying was, if Max was not willing to dumb down his analysis of things, the language he used, the vocabulary that he used, he was going to find someone else to bring it down a notch. And therefore, he replaced Max Kellerman and got him kicked off the show and went to an ensemble cast that he felt could perform that role better. Now, here's what's interesting. In both instances, Joe Budden and Chris Carter asked him, when you say that the show wasn't working with Max, was it based on ratings? In both cases, he said no. So it had nothing really to do with ratings. It had something to do with a personal feeling that he had. Now, Stephen A. Smith is the A side of that relationship. We must never forget this. We must never forget that. He's the A side. He's the one that's really going to call the shots. That we get that. And he certainly made that clear with his treatment of Max Kellerman on live TV pretty much every single week. We understood, right? But nevertheless, the point still stands. That basically, he wanted somebody or people to go up there and basically dumb people down. Number one, or number two, he wanted to be that he can get other people that could dumb people down, and he would be the smartest man in the room when he spoke. At least the most eloquent man. And I think he achieved that. I want to get to a larger issue that I think we need to touch on, which is this. The fact that he felt Max was speaking above the audience. I have a totally different take. Not on what he was saying in terms of ESPN First Take. I'm talking about sports fans in general. Okay? Because I personally believe if you withhold a standard and you're looking to cultivate an audience, ultimately, what will need to happen is that the audience is going to have to meet you at the standard that you set. If you set the bar low and you create trash and you're always just basically, you're unfiltered to the point where it's like, this is craziness, you're going to attract that. But if you try to set a standard for yourself, you're going to find like-minded people. They're going to meet you there. I'll give you guys an example we're talking about. when we were thinking about creating the show, it's had many iterations from when we first started. But at the core of it, when we were designing the show and the type of show that we wanted to have and the type of brand that we wanted to build, myself and Marco and now Mitch and as we move forward, number one, I made a concerted effort to not swear, right? Not because I can't swear. I can swear with the best of them. Trust and believe I can swear with the best of them. But I didn't want to come off that way because number one, that was already in the marketplace. And I didn't think that the marketplace needed another guy doing that. Number one, you can do it occasionally, but that wasn't going to be my disposition. Number two, I made an effort to speak as eloquently as I could, which means that I had to read more books, continue to be a student, learn. So therefore, whenever I'm expressing my views, they're clear for people to understand, right? That's the second thing. Third thing is we try to present ourselves as professionals to the best that we can, not to the point where people feel like they can't relate to you, but there has to be a certain decorum. Whenever you present yourself in a way that's thoughtful, people take notice. People are not stupid. This is the thing about it all. People aren't stupid. People can look and see the people that are putting forth the effort, and they can see the people that are not. It's clear. It's clear, right? It's clear. And we said to ourselves, we want to have one of the smartest sports communities on the internet, and I think we've done that. If you go to our comment section, whether it's our community board, we have one of the smartest, most vibrant sports communities on the internet. I would debate this with anybody. People talk, they go back and forth, but most importantly, people don't insult each other. They don't swear at each other. They don't say nasty things. Of course, you have the rotten apples, but for the most part, people are disagreeing with one another in a respectful way. So what does this mean? It means that instead of looking for somebody to dumb down viewers, you can actually get people to elevate viewers. You can. I've seen it. It happens every single day. So I totally disagree. I don't think that Max was too smart for the audience. I don't think he was none of that. I think that if they decided that that's the type of show that they wanted to have, it could be done. Now, maybe Stephen A. Smith, not maybe, it is clear that that's not the type of show he wanted. It is clear. It is clear. And personally, I think all of this crazy sports talk that we have going on, yeah, it can be entertaining to a certain level, but I think some of it is getting a little bit out of hand. Some of the things that the people are saying on the internet these days is crazy, right? It's crazy for the clicks and views and how disrespectful. I'm talking about some creators now, because they're setting the precedent for, because if your viewers see, if your audience see that's how you behave, they're going to mirror you. You're going to attract people that are just like you. So to me, I think there's a danger in that. But overall, I've noticed this pattern, which is Stephen A. Smith has this obsession with blaming Max Kellerman for everything. Just come out and say that, look, you thought he was you thought he was too smart for the people like that, but to blame him in the sense that he wasn't willing to play the game. Good for Max for staying true to yourself, man. Good for Max for staying true to yourself. And then you're going to have people on TV saying, oh, well, you got JJ Redick. You got JJ Redick. He was up there insulting you and doing, maybe that's what you wanted. Because Max Kellerman would never do that to you. I've seen JJ Redick undress your ass on TV. Undress you. If that's what you wanted, I guess that's what you got. These are my thoughts. Whatever you guys think, leave your thoughts in the comment section. We catch you guys on the next show. Peace.